Hello and welcome back into the mist. My name is Locke, my pronouns are they, he, and I will be your wereraven today. Now today we are venturing into a potential dangerous topic. We are going to rank the Darklords of the Domains of Dread, which those that we are ranking lower are not going to be happy about, but we're going to do it. We're going to hold each other's hands and get through it and run away real fast for anyone whose ego is going to be bruised, and thus they're going to try to kill us over ranking them super low. Now, before we get started, I am basing all of my opinions, these rankings, on D&D 5e lore, so if there's something that would maybe alter my opinion from previous editions that they've either altered or changed or completely nixed altogether, we're not talking about that today. We are purely talking about the Domains of Dread, Ravenloft lore, the Darklords that are currently present in the canon, and how I perceive them. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear why in the comments below. So as you can see here, now that I've shared my screen, I did make a tier maker list of all of the Darklords, and some of the art is taken from previous editions because there's not any in Van Ripton's Guide unless I just missed it, but that's totally fine. That's fully dandy. Excuse me, I'm trying to make a video! God. We got a vroom all over the place, apparently. I've got them listed here in alphabetical order of what domain they're from, so as they're listed in Van Richten's Guide. That obviously means that we have to start with the big man himself, Strahd von Zarovich. Strahd, as I have stated in an episode of Darklords and Dragons, is not actually my favorite Darklord, but I hate to say it, I think he's gotta go in S. He's gotta go in S. He is the character we think of the most when we think of Darklords. He's the one who started it all. He's the most iconic. He's got his whole own module. This all wouldn't exist without him, so I have to give credit where credit is due, and I'm gonna put him in S. I do think he's a very well-written character and very compelling if you really dig into the lore, not necessarily in the 5e module, but he is so narcissistic and was kind of forged to be that way, forged into a weapon, that I do find his character to be very, very interesting. If you don't just lean hardcore into like the misogynistic possession, dark romance story element of it all. If you just do that, I find him to be very one-note and boring, but if you do dive into everything that makes Strahd who he is, I think he's an S-tier Darklord. So next we have the Godbrain from Bloodspur. This is not technically what the Godbrain looks like. This is a Mind Flayer, art provided in Van Richten's Guide, but there's not art of the Godbrain because the Godbrain is an Elder Brain, a sickly Elder Brain, right? But the way that it is described in Van Richten's Guide is to treat it more like an environment rather than like a single entity, a person, an elder brain. So imagine an entire world, an entire domain that is built upon this diseased, dying, lashing out elder brain. That's what we're really thinking about. So Godbrain, there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with it, and this is one of those Darklords that you don't have a stat block for, because like I said, it's considered more like in an environment, so it's really overpowerful, overwhelming, omniscient, because it's kind of the area you're in when you're in Bloodspur, right? However, I don't really care for cosmic horror or mind flayers or anything in that realm. It's just not my particular cup of tea. I know that there are some really epic horror stories that can be told using the Godbrain as the Darklord, and there's a lot of elements about it and how it peaked beyond reality and got punished for it and understands this horrible secret about the world that we just can't understand. Or not the world, the universe, the multiverse. Like, that's really, really cool. I'm just not into it. I'm not willing to put it too far down. I'll put you in C. You're not terrible, but I'm not super interested in utilizing you in my particular campaigns, Godbrain. So we're gonna put you in C, because I know some people would go crazy about you. Ivana Boritsi from Borka. I love her official art. I think they made her so pretty. The environment behind her is so telling. I love her official art in Van Richten's Guide. Ivana Baritzi, though, herself, I do really like her backstory, well, elements of her backstory, in which she has always been underestimated and proved everyone wrong by essentially making the perfumes that her family manufactured poisonous and killing everyone. And now poison runs through her veins, and I don't know, I think that's really, really cool. However, as a Dark Lord, she is not exactly the strongest stat wise. I think most of her talents and skills come from like the social aspects of she's in charge, she's a noble, she's in charge. However, everyone greatly thinks that she's not capable of being in charge, that she is too young, because I think she's probably like literally 18 when she inherits her family title and becomes a Dark Lord. So, power wise, she's not as impressive. Do I want to root for a poisonous queen? Yes, I do. So, I think there's a lot of potential here, and I really want to see a woman win. You know, this is a Dark Lord I can get behind because she deserves better. But, oh, A or B? A or B? I think I might have to go with B. I might have to go with B. Yeah. Ivan's going straight to D. I'm not even gonna waste time deliberating too much before putting him in the ranking, but I'll tell you why. Ivan Delisnia is also a Dark Lord of Borka, because Borka has two Dark Lords, which I think is really fun and interesting. That might be what's the most compelling about a Borkan campaign, in my opinion, is the fact that there are two, and they could be connected, they could be working. Well, no, they wouldn't be working together. They're kind of rivals. You may never even know that they're both Dark Lords with the way that your campaign could be set up, because they could be connected. You could be working against one or the other. You might not interact with either of them at all. But I don't like Ivan because, one, not to judge someone by the way they look, but look at him. Look at him. And then two, I don't enjoy the aspect of his characterization where he will pretend to be like a little boy to get attention and manipulate people. It's a fun concept that's different than a lot of the other Dark Lords, but I just feel like that could get into some weird territories, and I don't know, I just don't really like him. I don't like him at all. I do think he's a good contrast to Ivana and Borka, but there's nothing about that Dark Lord that I like at all. So bottom tier he goes. Nepenthe is the sword. Is this sword. And Nepenthe is the Dark Lord of the Carnival. I do find it interesting that a sword is a Dark Lord, because that could be a very strong misdirect of thinking that Isolde is the Dark Lord of the Carnival, but she just merely wields the Dark Lord, or the Dark Lord technically kind of wields her, because it's corrupting her slowly, I would say. But there's not a lot more about Nepenthe itself, other than it is bloodthirsty and wants to kill people, so has really been feeding into Isolde's want for revenge. So for those reasons, I'm also going to be putting Nepenthe in D. I'm just not that interested in Nepenthe as a Dark Lord. Now, obviously, there's a lot of cool things that you could do with the Carnival as a domain, but I think the interesting part is more Isolde than Nepenthe itself. That's where I'm just like, I kind of don't really care about Nepenthe as a Dark Lord. I think the domain and its ringmaster is a lot more interesting than the actual Dark Lord. Alright, next up we have Azalen Rex. Now, some of you might find it a bit controversial that I have him on this list because he is not technically a Dark Lord in 5e lore. Azalen Rex has escaped Darkon, and the whole fun thing about Darkon in 5e is that there are inheritors of Darkon who are trying to vie, campaign for the Dark Lord title of who can save a falling apart, failing domain, because domains can't continue to exist without having a Dark Lord at its center. They're literally prisons designed for that purpose, so if it doesn't have one, the domain starts to fail. So that is very interesting, very cool, and maybe one day I'll make a video about that in particular. But that being said, Azalen Rex is still technically in the 5e canon, the 5e mythos. Throughout Van Richten's guide, there are a lot of clues to what and where Azalen is. It's obviously a lot easier if you know lore from 2e, past editions to figure out what happened there. But if you don't know that and you haven't looked into it on Mistopedia, there are the clues, if I could talk, the clues to put together when you go through Van Richten's Guide to discover that. And that's a whole story you can add into a domain hopping campaign in itself. So I think it warrants raiding Azalin Rex because he could return to Darkon because of something that your party does. It become the Darklord again. Something else could happen to him. No matter what, you could possibly run into Azalin Rex in a Domains of Dread campaign, no matter what you're doing. So I put him on the list. S. S. Can I put this before Strahd? Cool. He's top tier for me. I think Azalin Rex is so cool. Look at me. I'm like turning into a fanboy. I think Azalin Rex is really, really sick. So he's S tier above Strahd. Yeah, let's the closer they are to the letter, the higher they are in the ranking. So let me put Nepenthe before Ivan, because he's definitely my lowest ranked Darklord. But anyway, back to Azalin Rex. Azalin is so fucking cool, man. I think he's a terrible, terrible person. He's a lich, obviously. He's been a wizard corrupted by Arcana for so long and the need for power and whatnot. Like, I'm not justifying anything he's ever done. Terrible, terrible man. But what I find the most interesting about him is because he has broken apart the domains at least twice, because he escapes Dargon, and then there's the Grand Conjunction. Is that what it's called? Where he broke apart all of Ravenloft and all of the terrible beasts, monsters, and Darklords were let back into the rest of the material plane. But instead of escaping, which has been like his whole goal since he got stuck here, instead of escaping, that petty bitch went back to Barovia to fight Strahd like a scorned ex-lover. And they battled until the mist reconvened, and then they weren't able to escape, and that's what happened. And I love our petty Lich King, and I will not apologize for it. So, he is S tier. I don't know if he's gonna be my top S tier, but he's definitely S tier to me. Alright, our next Darklord is Sidra Donaire from Daemon Lu. And this is another situation where the horrors of a domain and a Darklord's powers is more the social contract of the world. And I think this might be controversial. I don't know. I haven't seen a whole lot of love for Sidra, but I think I'm gonna put her in A. I love her. She has a little bit of a Cinderella-esque story, but I also really love the concept of the Grand Masquerade. And I don't just mean the event that's listed in Van Richten's Guide. I mean the entire domain is just a masquerade. It's everyone wearing masks, quite literally, but also figuratively and emotionally. No one is who they say they are, including Sidra. And in a campaign where I put my party in Dom and Lu, it ended up being so much more influential. The social expectations and the structure of that, they were so much more scared of the environment that they were in that they kept missing these vital plot points that they needed to achieve, and things kept getting worse and worse and worse because they were so scared about the consequences of not meeting these social etiquette requirements of the society of Dom and Lu that Sidra sets up. So I think she's a very, very interesting Darklord just for that aspect, but then she's also like the Red Death, which is very fun and interesting. So people are constantly dying because she is basically just like a red wraith. So that is her main power in how she carries out terror. It's both the, by day, the social etiquette that you have to play by, and then by night, someone's dying every night. And I don't know, I think she's really interesting. I think a Dom and Lu's campaign would be very, very fun, but very potentially stressful. Next up, we have Vladeska Drakov from Falkovnia. She is a general perpetually going through a zombie apocalypse. I think it's on every new moon, a new horde comes out of the mist and attacks like the one settlement within Falkovnia, and she is the general leading the charge. It's very militaristic, very dictatorship. You cannot desert, you will be impaled, you will be tracked down and impaled, sort of thing. Very, very cruel, hard woman. I really like zombie media It's very rare that I don't like a movie that is about the horrors of zombies or a TV show. So that I do find very interesting. I don't know how sustainable a campaign is long term because it's so dark and dreary. And I feel like she's very one note in just her cruelty. And obviously you can flesh this out, but as written, she just feels very one note, where I'm gonna put her at C. I'm not as interested in her as a character, in her as a Dark Lord. I do like her better than the Godbrain, but I'm gonna keep her at C. Moving on to Onkpot of Harakir. I feel like I'm about to disappoint a lot of people, but I think I am gonna put Onkpot low C. And I'm just not interested. I'm not interested. I think a lot of people went through like an Egyptology phase that I just never went through. Like I know a lot of people grew up loving The Mummy, with Brendan Fraser. I don't like that movie. I didn't see that until last year, I think it was. Saw it for the first time. Did not care for it. I couldn't get past the very casual SA. That was the way that the main male character and his love interest met, which I know was just a trope and like a standard of movies from that era, what, the early 2000s or whatever. I that doesn't justify it. I just couldn't get past it, and then it just soured the rest of the movie for me. So I did never enjoy that movie. And I never went through that phase. I don't know. I think it's just that maybe I just don't know enough about Egyptian mythos and their gods and stuff like that. Or if I did, maybe I would be more interested. So the fact that Ongpot's whole thing is about becoming like a false god and needing to find his Ka and then creating like this false religion and that sort of thing, like it's so steeped in Egyptian mythology. Don't know why I couldn't think of that word. Egyptian mythology that, I mean, it doesn't use those gods in particular, although I'm sure that you probably could if you wanted to fully go into an Egyptian based campaign without it being like super fantasy. But like it's so steeped in that, and since like I've never gone into that realm of things, it doesn't interest me. I just don't find him that interesting. I don't think he's a bad Dark Lord. I think there's a lot of fun things about him in particular, especially because he is a Dark Lord that you could free in a way depending on how you want your campaign to go. I do think that is very interesting. So he's not terrible, not going to be in D, but like I'm just not as interested in Ongpod. Let's move on to our sleepy wizard boy. We're going to talk about Hazlick, Dark Lord of Haslin. Very narcissistic in his naming conventions. Hazlick, I do actually really like Hazlick. Hazlick was a red wizard of Thay who betrayed his lover because they were rivals turned lovers, but was so selfish in his want to learn magic that betrayed his lover Andreficus, turned him into a portal that he fled through, which led him into Haslan, and now he can no longer learn new magics. What I think is interesting about Hazlick is like that's something about Azael and Rex, is that when he came to the Domains of Dread, he couldn't learn new magics. So I feel like that's something from Azaelan that they gave to Hazlick. Could be wrong about that, but it does feel like that is the way that that is. I do love our paranoid, sleep deprived, haunted, tired man Hazlick, haunted by his gay lover that he destroyed. And I think it's interesting the eyes of Hazlick about he uses like arcane objects in markings to be all powerful because he, in a way, he's kind of not a wizard anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he does have the magic he already knew. It's just that he can't learn new stuff, but he loves magic items. And I personally don't get to use a lot of magic items since I've run Curse of Strahd so many times, and I always think that that's a bit more low magic. Magic items are going to be so expensive to get a hold of in that domain that I am intrigued by a Dark Lord who relies on them, so they're gonna be more prevalent in the world. I think I would put Hazlick at A as well. I think I'm gonna keep him below Sidra though, because I have more experience with Sidra personally, so there's like a special place in my heart for her. But I do think he's a very, very interesting Dark Lord. So next up we have Dark Lord Tien Chang, Dark Lord of Ikath, and I have mixed feelings about her. She is a complicated Dark Lord. In life, she was a ruler who gave her people like an idealized utopia, and it still wasn't enough. And there was an uprising, and I believe they killed her daughters because they weren't satisfied enough with near perfection, like a golden rule, a golden age of this world. And that led to her being pulled into the Mist, into Ikath, and becoming the Dark Lord there, where it's like a dual domain situation where if you are able to stay awake, you're in a very desolate, rundown city that is overrun with Jiangshi, who are basically like the ancestors of these people who are not being allowed to rest because they're not getting their proper offerings and respect from the living, because most of the living are stuck dreaming, stuck asleep because of the nightingale bell that gets rung. Because if you fall asleep, if you fall subject to that bell, it's this deep magical sleep that you get dragged into. And in those dreams, you are in this absolutely gorgeous utopia with like golden streets and buildings with jade inlays and like marble and all these beautiful, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, what we think of when we think of the ideal city. But Tian Chang is never satisfied with it. She's a perfectionist, so it's always changing. So you were kind of forced into the labor in your dream of constantly changing the world for her so that things can be perfect for her and her daughter, sort of thing. So I do think she is interesting, and there's a lot to work with there, and there's obviously like maybe some Chinese myths that I'm just not currently aware of at this point in time that would enhance this outside of what is provided in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. I think from the element of I've never been that interested in an ICATH campaign because of the fact that it is kind of like a locked domain. You kind of can't do much with it unless you're just going to run a singular campaign within it, which means I haven't looked at her too closely. I don't think she's a bad Dark Lord. I'm just not as interested. I think it falls in the same realm of like Ongpot, but for different reasons. Because I'm not as interested in the domain, I haven't become as interested in her as a Dark Lord. Whereas like Ongpot, it's because like it's so based in something that I've just never gotten to know, sort of thing. So yeah, I think I want to put her at low C, because unfortunately I am less interested in her than I am in Ongpot. So I think that would be fair. And next up we have Ramya Vazavadan, Dark Lord of Kalikari. I love Ramya. Ramya deserved better. She was the rightful ruler of the kingdom's not the right word, because this one in Kalikari is inspired by Indian culture. She's a Marahani. That is her proper title. And I can't remember. Dynasty? Is that? I don't know. Oh, I don't want to speculate and get this wrong. But she was supposed to inherit that title. She is the proper Marahani, and her siblings conspired against her and essentially killed her to try to take the title. And now the whole thing about Kalikari is the constant civil war of her trying to get the Sapphire Throne back from her siblings, who are constantly trying to betray her, and it just keeps going again and again and again. I really like her art as well. I think she is absolutely beautiful. She is our Death Knight, and anyone who enters her service and dies in her service gets to come back as like a revenant, skeletal warrior, that sort of thing. I think she is one of the more compelling Dark Lords. Like I said, I think she deserved much, much better. I think there's a lot of interesting things to be done with her, because she is a noble who knows how to carry herself around people, but she is so paranoid about being betrayed again. And I think giving her that duality really enhances the character in a way that I personally enjoy in a Dark Lord. So I'm gonna put her up. I'm gonna put her up in A. I do think I like her better than Haslick. So yeah, I think mid A for me. Romney is great. She's beautiful. She's wonderful. She deserves better. Give her back the Sapphire Throne. Give it to her. It's hers. All right. Now we gotta talk about my man Harkin Lucas. I love this dude. I love this dude so much. I'm putting him in S. I do like him better than Strahd. Harkin Lucas is the Dark Lord of Kartakas, which is the Bard domain. He is a Bard. He realized that he could weaponize people's adoration My stomach just growled when I said that. I don't know if the mic picked it up. But I think that lends a hand to the hunger that is prevalent in Cartacas, in Hark and Lucas, of that ambition for fame and success. That is the hunger, that is the driving force of what the lycanthropy is based off of. It's not your typical werewolf lycanthropy, it is more about the artistic endeavors destroying you slowly and needing to constantly feed that. I was trying to think of a better word for hunger, but I can't think of one. But trying to, you have to feed that hunger of making the next thing and being the best and constantly challenging yourself creatively. And Harkin, his whole curse is that no one can remember him. He wants to be this big name. He had fame, infamy, like a cult like fan base. Stands. He had stands and he lost it all. And he desperately wants that back. So people are constantly forgetting who he is, underestimating him, kind of being like, oh, you still make music? Wow. Oh, I thought you disappeared into obscurity. He's not a very powerful Dark Lord because he is a loop guru, which is very, very fun. But for the most part, he's not like top tier power wise. But I think the elements of him that make it easy for him to achieve his plans because people forget who he is. He's I feel like he's a Dark Lord that people underestimate. I also really like his style. He's very stylish. And I'm a sucker for a bard. So if anyone was shocked that I was gonna put him in S tier, what are you doing? I've been very upfront about being all about them bards over my time on the internet. So yeah, Harkin S tier. I think I do like him between Azalin and Strahd. I really want to run a campaign with him. A Cartacus campaign. I really want to do it. Alright, before I talk about Harkin for way too long in this video, let's move on to Lamortia's Dark Lord, Dr. Victra Mordenheim. If you know the story of Frankenstein with Dr. Victor Frankenstein, you basically kind of know what she's got going on as a Dark Lord, as a character. But she's a lesbian. This is also her toxic Yuri Dark Lord, and I love her for that. She is constantly trying to innovate through science and experiments and stitch flesh creations, and she made something called the Unbreakable Heart that she used to bring her lover back to life. Her lover Elise, who caught a mysterious illness that had no cure to it and died and came back because of the Unbreakable Heart. But then Victra only became obsessed with the invention and wanting to be able to replicate it to further scientific endeavors, that sort of thing, rather than caring about Elise. So very cruel, very cold. I do find her very compelling, so much so that I've combined a Curse of Strahd campaign where it's about Barovia and Lamortia. Very, very excited about. Goes a little into sci-fi realms, which I'm not exactly known for liking. So I'm very intrigued to how I'm gonna end up. I'm gonna let you guys in on behind the scenes for a moment. This video has taken me so long to record, like in the process, because it is so hot in my room and I keep fucking up my words. But I really want to record this so that this can come out on time. But it's so hard. I trip up on my words so much more often, and I'm almost out of water. And this was full before we started. It is so hot. Anyway, I need this to be over. We still have 4 Dark Lords to go through. Obviously more scientific and sci-fi based, but there's body horror elements, so we're gonna see how I end up getting through that with her. But I think she's very interesting and very compelling. I think that there's a great toxic lesbian love story to be had there. And we don't get enough of that. The straights have enough. Let us have our toxic lesbians. I'll get off my soapbox now. Okay, next up is Wilfred Godfrey. This is old 2E art because I couldn't find anything for him in 5th edition in Van Riften's guide, so forgive that. Godfrey is our Dark Lord of Mordant, our ghost domain. He is literally a ghost in the house on Griffin Hill, I believe. And he cannot stop haunting that mansion, so he lures people to kill so then he can force their spirits to go out and do his bidding. And I don't care about him at all. I still hate Ivan more, but I am so disinterested in Wilfred. Wilfred? Look, I'm even messing up his name. That's how little I don't like him. Where the fuck is his name? Wilfred. Wilfred Godfrey. I just don't care. He was a horribly abusive man who, like, killed his wife and children and family and all that stuff. I don't know. I just don't have any interest in him. He just seems like a really, really terrible guy. And there's no, like, depth to it. Maybe there is in previous lore, but in 5e, like, I don't know. I don't care. He's a ghost. I do like Mordant as, like, a ghost domain. Don't care about him, though, as a Darklord. I think he's kind of weak. So let's move on to Jacqueline Renier, who is the Darklord of Richmelo, who... I don't like her. I don't like her. Her art? Ooh, she ate. She ate and she knows. I mean, look at that stank face she's even given us. She knows she's beautiful and has style, and she wants you to know that you will always be beneath her. But her whole thing is classism, that she doesn't want, the middle or the lower class to rise in the ranks. She wants the nobility and the aristocratic system to stay in place, that she is better just because she was born with more money, sort of thing. And to keep that in check, she decides when the plague comes to town and kills off people. So it just feels like it's a little too close to reality to where I'm not as interested in the domain, and then I just think she's just rich bitch throwing a fit. Get over it. Eat the rich. I don't like her. I do think she's more compelling than Wilfred or Ivan. Is she more compelling? I'm gonna put her at high D. I don't like her at all, but I think her character does have a bit more depth and more to work with in a campaign than the rest of these in the D tier. But I don't like Jacqueline. I don't think I'll ever try to utilize her as a Darklord. I'm gonna be so for real. I think she's boring. It's just, I mean, if anyone wants to do a story where it is literally just eat the rich, that would be interesting. But again, short term, I don't know. I don't like her. I could do more with her. I could probably flesh her out to make her more interesting, but as written, no. Alright, moving right along to Mother Lorinda, Darklord of Tempest. Mother Lorinda is a hag who betrayed her coven and has locked them up in a cauldron within her, like, Baba Yaga hut. I know it's got a different name, but I can't remember what it is right now. And her whole thing is she wants to have a child, but she can't. And anything she makes, literally, like, out of bramble and branches and antlers that she makes to be her child, Lurche, ends up dying. Or Lursha, I think it is, technically. And she disguises herself as Mother, a very beautiful woman, like godlike person who is worshipped more like a cult by the residents of Victal, who then will, like, kind of have ritual sacrifices to her. Ugh. Again, this is another one I'm just not that interested in. I think it's because we go into, like, fae stuff and hag deals and stuff like that, and I just get disinterested once we get to those realms. Those are elements that I've always really wanted to be interested in, but every time I try to run something with those, I just get really disinterested. I don't really find her as a Darklord that compelling. I do really like the cultish activity and the folklore aspects that you could pull into this, but I'm not as interested in Mother Lorinda as a Darklord. I think there are a lot of compelling elements about her that could be interesting, but yeah, I think I'm gonna put her in C between Vladeska and the Godbrain. Not a bad Darklord. A lot of interesting stories could be told with Mother Lorinda, but I don't care. I don't care that much. And last but not least, we have Chakuna, Darklord of Valakan. Chakuna is one of my favorite Darklords. She is a werepanther. She is our only willing Darklord. She sacrificed herself to save her people and ripped her heart out in this secret ritual. during the Trial of Hearts, or whatever the equivalent was back when the old Darklord was in charge, and took over the Darklord title. She signed up for this in a way. Did she know entirely what she was signing up for? No. And now the version of her that we know now is this very corrupted version. It's the cycle of the oppressed becoming the oppressor. And I do find that very, very interesting. And I think she's one of the more sympathetic Dark Lords out of all of them, where you could really hear what she went through, know that the Werepanthers were almost hunted to extinction by the previous Dark Lord, and she stepped up to do what it took. But now she's perpetuating this cycle of suffering in her people's names and has become a tyrant in itself. And she doesn't care. Becoming a Dark Lord has, like, hardened her heart, made her a heartless hunter. And she does not care. But because I find her story so interesting and compelling, and something that we've seen in history time and time again, so a lot of people can see themselves in it, I just think that she's really interesting. I also do like that this is our Hunger Games-esque domain, and she runs the Hunger Games, essentially. That's what the Trial of Hearts kind of are. I'm gonna put her in S tier. I do like her better than Strahd. But the real question is do I like her more or less than Harkin? I feel like I can't betray my bard roots. I do really like her, but I think she is below Harkin. But she's such a cool character. I really do like the Werepanther aspect. She's got a little displacer beast friend that's by her side. She's got Urk's head on display as like a victory trophy. The jungle complies with her. I don't know. I think she's really, really cool and interesting, and she's got a lot more depth to work with. That I think, depending on how you want to run it, she could also be a potentially redeemable Dark Lord. Or she's a Dark Lord that one of your PCs could replace, which I think is interesting. Which I know is not necessarily about her, but the fact that she is a Dark Lord that we get away for one of the characters playing in the world can become her, I think is interesting. There we have it, gang. This is my tier list for the Dark Lords and the Domains of Dread. So let's go over it. So in S tier, we have Zalen Rex, Harkin Lucas, Chakuna, and then Strahd von Zarovich. I think that is very fair. I think that's a pretty sick lineup for our top tier. A tier, we have Sidra Donaire, Ramya Vazavadan, and Hazlitt. Again, I think those are great contenders for A tier. I think they have a lot to work with for campaigns or to combine into other campaigns to bring them forth into other realms of possibilities. They got a lot to work with. Our B tier consists of Dr. Victor Mordenheim and Ivana Baritzi, two lovely queens that I think have a lot going for them, but are not as compelling to me as our A tier or S tier. Our C tier consists of Vladeska Drakov, Mother Lorinda, the Godbrain, Ongpot, and Tian Chang. These are Dark Lords that I think a lot of people find interesting, but I just think that they're okay. I think if I put more work into them or did more research, I would find them to be a bit more interesting, but, you know, everyone's gonna have their preferences when it comes to their villains, / what campaign settings they want to put their parties through, and them I'm just not as currently interested in. And then last, but very much least, our D tier for the Dark Lords I just straight up don't like or don't find interesting in any way, shape, or form. We have Jacqueline Renier, Nepenthe, Wilfred Godfrey, and Ivan Delisnia. These are just the worst of the worst. They're either just not very in-depth characters, or they're just so boring and one note, or they're just their characteristics are just so grating to me that I have no interest in including them at all. There you have it, chat. Alright, I just want to thank you guys for joining me in the mist today. If you would rank the Dark Lords a little differently, I would love to hear where you would have put someone and why. Did I put your favorite in the D tier and you're angry about it, or like lower on the rank? Like who would you put in S tier that I didn't, and what is your argument for that? I'm very curious to hear what people's thoughts are and opinions, because I know everyone's got their favorite little blorbo when it comes to these terrible, terrible, horrible people. But those are mine. I feel like my S tier was probably a bit predictable if you've been watching my content for a while, but that's fine. That's fine. I'm okay. I'm okay with being known. More people need to be okay with being known. But now that we are at the end of this video, thank you all for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It lets me know that I'm making stuff that you guys like to see. And if you haven't already, you should hit that subscribe button because that also lets me know that you're enjoying this content and there is plenty more to come that is similar in nature or potentially different as I explore new things. So now let's go ahead and get out of the mist before Nepenthe finds out I put it so low down on my tier list and decides to make Isolde want to kill me as revenge on her journey to find the collar. Maybe it'll convince her that I am the collar, and I don't really want to die for my tier list. At least not currently. So let's get on out of here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.